All right, we're coming to the end here with our final panel. This one's going to be focused on defensive cyber operations, and your moderator is going to be Dr. Matthew McFadden, Vice President of Cyber for GDIT, and he's going to be joined by Erin Shepley, Deputy Associate Director for Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative at CISA, and Sean Connelly, Executive Director of Global Zero Trust Strategy and Policy at Zscaler. Let's give them a warm welcome.
All right, good morning, everyone. We've learned a lot of very interesting concepts over the last couple hours or so. So, I mean, we've talked proactive cyber. We learned situational awareness. We've learned that we need to have better operational cyber metrics. So I think there's more to the same. I'm sure we'll talk about AI and zero trust. But so I think to go into this panel, we're focused on defensive cyber. So how do we bring it home? One of the things that really took me in 2025 was the average adversary breakout time is about 51 seconds. And that means once they get into your environment, they're moving laterally. So, that's eye-opening. And, from a threat landscape perspective, that the threat is increasing. I mean, it's with AI that's, just ever increasing. Vulnerabilities are coming. I mean, how do we handle it? So I think to really set the stage here is we really want to talk about that threat landscape. So, since we know the threat is changing and government and industry really have a unique perspective, let's talk about, from your perspectives, what are you seeing from an advanced threat and evolving nation-state activity? And Erin, I'll start with you.
Thanks for having us. And unfortunately, it feels like everyone stole our talking points. So you're going to hear a nice, clean wrap-up of all of that content just now. So if you're not familiar with our organization, Chris talked a little bit earlier. CISA is a new agency, but we've existed in DHS for some time. Similarly with JCDC, we were established to really try to evolve the way that we work with partners. And partners extend from federal government, state and local government, critical infrastructure, international governments, and industry, probably, perhaps most importantly. This isn't recent, but I do want to talk about it. Critical infrastructure is a target. So for many years, it was very common that the conversation was around espionage, right? So kind of coming in to get secrets, to get ahead of research and development. But really, over the past few years, we've seen an aggressive move by a lot of our nation-state adversaries in targeting critical infrastructure. Just a little over a year ago, we released an advisory on Volt Typhoon and talking about how we see these adversaries probing, pre-positioning, and looking at critical infrastructure using quite advanced living off the land techniques.
Awesome. Thanks, Erin. All right, Sean, over to you. How has the defensive cyber landscape shifted?
Sure. So again, thank you for having me here. I used to work with Erin. It's my privilege to be on stage with her now. So a couple different ways. So my prior role at CISA, I helped lead the Trusted Internet Connection Program, the TIC program. TIC 1 started in almost 2007, TIC 2, 2012, and TIC 3 started in 2019 or so. Where I'm going with this is how the perimeter has disappeared over that time period. Where we started with TIC 1, TIC 2, having these finite legacy firewall stacks, and where we are now, where data is everywhere, the systems are everywhere, the people are everywhere, and being able to understand how to defend that in new ways. So shifting the security, if you will, and where we were before, we were forcing all the traffic through those finite tick stacks, and now moving data or security closer to where those resources are. I think that's a key thing to recognize. And from an operational perspective, from the CISO perspective or CIO perspective, understanding how you have to shift the visibility and the responsibilities and the risk models change as the technology changes. The second thing, as Erin was talking about with nation states, part of the challenge is you're seeing with AI, you're seeing how it's lowering the bar for entry for a lot of the adversaries. And you're seeing this cross-collaboration more between nation states and some private sector entities. And they're using AI in new ways. So having that ability for the good guys, the defenders, to be able to recognize what's going on from the adversary perspective, being able to build defenses more robustly, overlaying defenses in different ways, being able to recognize, let's say, something from the identity pillar, how you can use telemetry attributes from the identity maybe feeding the network pillar or the device pillar, and overlaying these attributes in new ways so you don't have to build inherent trust with any one perspective of your enterprise itself is, I think, something we've done differently from where we were 10, 15 years ago.
Sure. Yeah, Sean, you spoke pillars, so you must be referencing Zero Trust. So I think that's a good segue into our next question. So, Zero Trust has become a federal mandate. Then again, we hear it a lot as a buzzword. Earlier, we talked defense in depth. So there's a lot of strategies in place. But one of the things we also talked about was compliance in one of the earlier sessions. So how do you really go about operationalizing Zero Trust from a security perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just to familiarize everyone, what Matthew was talking about was back in 2021, post-SolarWinds, there was a large focus from the federal government to operationalizing Zero Trust in the government. One thing that was different about the Zero Trust efforts we're doing than earlier efforts, even from our time CISA and NPPD, I think maybe going back to CDM was the only other one where I could see this, was where the leadership was supporting from the White House, from OMB, from what's now ONCD, talking to their counterparts, like the number 2, the number 3 in the leadership chain at the agencies. So you had this top-down awareness where a lot of the other cybersecurity programs, I don't think you had the same type of interest. So having that, technologists, if you will, and the operators understanding what was going on with Zero Trust, but complementing from the leadership side was really different towards what we had from earlier programs. Second thing towards Zero Trust, one thing that helped is just being able to explain how Zero Trust, when you start to promote Zero Trust properly, how it leads to faster agility for the enterprise itself. From my time on the Technology Modernization Fund Board, Chris Gutierrez, my old boss, is on the board still. A lot of these awards to the agencies were for projects that were being more agile and working with the CIOs and the CISOs, help them appreciate these modern protocols, these modern technologies, how they're going to help the mission in new ways from where they were before. So I think between the leadership buy-in and then understanding the agility of 2 different ways Zero Trust has worked in ways before.
Yeah, any thoughts around communication to stakeholders, whether internally or externally?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing that was interesting with Zero Trust was each agency had to have a Zero Trust advocate or program leader inside the agency. Where we saw the most success at the agency level was where those leadership teams at those agencies were then able to have different type of meetings with the different stakeholders, the mission owners, and actually had a lot of communication, to your point, Matthew, in different ways, again, going up to leadership and down to the different system owners themselves. And it was more understanding, okay, recognizing the risk, the mission, the restraints that may be on each individual mission, how can that mission still be able to support Zero Trust? So like one example you always use, talk to Mike Witt. Mike used to be the CISO for NASA. No one at NASA was expecting NASA to put CrowdStrike EDR agents on the Voyager satellites that are 15 billion miles out, in space. But at the same time, that data that comes back, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that's universally unique data. So how can we protect that data in new ways and work with those mission owners is something I think different from where we were before.
Yeah, I think some of the trends, right, communication with those stakeholders are key. I think a lot of the challenges amongst agencies are very similar. And then there's some unique use cases where, we need to share those lessons learned. So I think, this is a good trend to talk about collaboration. Hence, you have collaborative in your title up there. So Erin, over to you. Public-private collaboration is often described as critical. So where are we succeeding in collaborating on threats, and where does this model still need improvement?
So I think we've come a long way. My use case, or at least my benchmark, was Log4j. Log4j, that open source vulnerability that kind of destroyed us for that whole weekend and maybe a few weeks thereafter, was the first time that I really saw government working with industry, everyone from cyber threat companies to understand how the adversary was exploiting that vulnerability, to vendors to understand where Log4j was within their products, and responding to a vulnerability and incidents in real time. We had not really done that as government. We've evolved from there to working with our partners in response to geopolitical tensions. We worked with industry and critical infrastructure when Russia was pre-positioning and invading Ukraine. We've done similar around Middle East tensions and wars, and obviously against some of our favorite nation states, Russia and China, where we are looking not only just what could we do from a defensive standpoint, but I think it was talked on some of the panels earlier, like we're going to see the impacts or the incidents in critical infrastructure and industry first. So how can we set up a network where government is working with these partners to understand what's happening globally? And a great example of that is if we sanction a nation state actor, their retaliation might be in kind. So a financial sanction might in kind return attacks against the banking and finance sector. So we need to make sure that we understand what's going on there. Where can we continue to improve? It still takes us a long time to piece that picture together. You mentioned that terrifying statistic of 51 seconds. We certainly aren't cooperating at that speed quite yet, but I think it's taking us a long time, and if I can give the quick analytic, right? So the federal government might observe adversary intent. We might know what the adversary wants to do, what its targets are, might know what those tactics are. Critical infrastructure might be observing that in real time, and then industry, whether it's a cyber threat company, ISP, CSP, might be able to see that actors' activity across multiple critical infrastructure sectors and that campaign across the nation. We really need all three of those parties to pull together to understand the risk, the picture, and kind of what we need to do to defend against it.
Thanks, Erin.
I think it's just real quick. It's important to recognize where this has come from. Back even 2015, 2016, I supported the Einstein 3 program. This is government sensors supporting government agencies. We would have incidents or recognized threats coming from those sensors, and even internally from government to government, we could basically just tell some of these agencies, you have a threat on your network. We couldn't tell them IP addresses, we couldn't tell them name, couldn't tell them time, anything about just context. So I recognize what Erin's talking about here. There's been this total change. There's been a real compliment to JCDC, what you've done for the last 4 or 5 years. You know, expand that ability to share information at a faster pace. Again, where we were 10 years ago, this is a total game changer. So it's great.
Yeah. So the collaboration is key, threat sharing is key. You know, I have to say that the reports that CISA releases around Salt Typhoon, as well as the known exploited vulnerabilities, I mean, are critical. I mean, we're using those day to day. So yeah, I can't thank CISA enough for the products and things that you all are putting out. So as we move into the next topic here. So I think you all have different priorities, right? But from a government industry perspective, right? There's things that you're doing to help drive forward, basically, your priorities. So as you look ahead, taking a look at defensive cyber, over the 12 to 24 months, whether it's technology, workforce, or policy, like what are your important priorities? So Sean, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think the first one, just we saw yesterday, the policy with CISA up at the Hill, there's momentum toward that. That's very encouraging. On a more tactical level, if you will, my time at Zscaler and my prior work at CISA, what I'm working with is a number of agencies are still on their, like I mentioned before, on these legacy firewall stacks, on the legacy technologies. 2017, 2018, when we were starting to move forward with TIC3 and working with the White House on what TIC3 is going to be about, a lot of agencies were asking OMB to give relief from the prior solutions. So that was part of what TIC3 was about, was moving agencies forward to give these more modern security solutions. Move forward to now, still seeing some of these same agencies that were complaining back in 7, 8 years ago, they're still on these same technology stacks for one reason or another. So working with those agencies, helping them understand, sometimes it's cost challenges, sometimes it's risk tolerance challenges, working with those different agencies that help them move forward and move on to more modern platforms, one of my focuses right now.
Cool. Any thoughts around some of the modern topics of like segmentation?
Oh, okay. Shout out 5th time in a row here for CISA and the micro-segmentation document they released this summer. There's a lot of interest toward what Matthew's talking about with segmentation. You can talk about segmentation in terms of network segmentation. Chris and I have had discussions about how just separating dev environments from the enterprise environment, the OT environment from the enterprise environment. So there's that type of network segmentation. There's also identity segmentation, if you want to look at it like the way that enterprise users need to be separated from the privileged users, like the super admins, and then those, the VIPs. That's another area we're seeing a lot of interest, a lot of focus towards segmentation itself. And finally, what we're seeing toward device segmentation, what we can have devices have some type of telemetry or better visibility coming off those devices versus like what Aaron's talking about before in critical infrastructure, a lot of the OT devices, we have very limited types of visibility coming off there, and how you can then use different security solutions outside that one OT device to understand what's going on in that environment.
Cool. Thanks, Sean. All right, Erin, what about your priorities over the next 12 to 24 months?
So we talked about it already, you know, the Volt Typhoon advisory, we saw them using significantly sophisticated tactics, but I think for every instance that I see 12 to 12,000 that are not sophisticated, and they are continually utilizing CVEs that have been out there for a year, 2 years. You mentioned it a second ago. We released a cybersecurity advisory on the Salt Typhoon activity that we saw last year. Guess what? 2023, 2024, those are the vulnerabilities being used. Not so sophisticated, not so advanced. Or end of life, or things that shouldn't be reaching to the internet, right? So every single time we see that puzzler, we see a million that are, wow, that was just a really bad practice. You should have patched that a long time ago, or that probably should have never still been there. So yes, we are all getting paid to say this, but Kev, I'll mention it for like the 15th time, has been a happy accidental success for us. It was originally established for us to better manage vulnerability management and patch management across the federal government. If you can believe it, we pulled out the fire brigade every single time a vulnerability was released. But it really set a bar that we have heard that everyone from a Fortune 500, 100 company to our state and local partners to critical infrastructure are using to follow, and to all of the points previously, start to prioritize their vulnerability management internally.
Yeah. So yeah, the known exploited vulnerabilities, I mean, I think that's what we live by, at least most of us in the room here. And I think the second thing is you mentioned internet assets. It's probably something to focus on as well. So to wrap up here, we have a lot of cyber folks and executives in the crowd, but if you could give one piece of advice, from the organization to strengthen its cyber resiliency, what would that be? And Sean, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Yeah, the one piece I'd go suggest is where we were 10 years ago with some of the compliance exercises. I love what Randy Resnick over at DoD is doing, Zero Trust Portfolio Management Officer, toward red teaming. And it's less about a checkbox compliance, and it's more about having these red teams come in, see how they can move around the environment, see how they can laterally shift between different endpoints. I've worked with a number of organizations outside the federal government now, and they're starting to employ red teaming. And then also the second thing I just suggest, the different information sharing ISACs that are out there. Some of the different organizations look at the ISACs as almost like an extension of their SOC themselves. So it's just between the ISACs and then also red team, I think 2 suggestions.
Erin, what about you?
I think my point is kind of inherently in the question. We spend a lot of time and resources and money focused on defense. We don't spend a lot of time talking about resilience. We're very worried about, how do we block this? How do we keep this from coming in? But really, I would like, a lot more conversation about how do we maintain those critical services? What are those critical services? How could we get them back quickly? Because in a lot of these use cases, it's going to be very likely that if the actor wants to compromise you, they're going to be able to compromise you, whether it's from, unfortunately, that vulnerability you should have patched 2 years ago, or from something new and novel that you simply cannot detect. Because there are no tools, resources, or amount of people that could have prevented it. So I think as much as we want to talk about defense, let's also talk about resilience and make sure that organization is able to restore and repair.
Yeah, it's just a matter of when the 51 seconds, they're going to break out. So with that, just give the panel here a round of applause, and thank you.